I'm waiting for my pardon. It has not yet arrived.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I guess Hunter is in line for the best pardon. It's the golden ticket pardon, of course, which is I'm pardoning you for this and anything else you ever did and anything back then and anything in the future.
Can you preemptively pardon people? Did we decide you could do that?
Apparently you can. It's controversial, but you can certainly do it. It's a little like the self-pardon. Can presidents pardon themselves? Mm-hmm. And, you know, again, something that hasn't been super well established, but it is apparently something that one might be able to get away with. And certainly we feel as though we're close to road testing that with this presidency that's coming up.
Do you think that Biden should just do a preemptive blanket pardon for Jimmy Kimmel?
Right, that's right.
Like all these comedians,
yeah,
all the members of the military who've spoken out against Trump, like everyone he's trying to go after, just pardon them all.
You know, it's true. Elise Inzarillo in the chat notes that the rod of equity and mercy, let's face it, Hunter has a pardon, which he may consider of great value, but he does not have the rod of equity and mercy. Only viewers and listeners to this show have been in receipt of the rod of equity and mercy. And maybe today, in the last half hour of the show, I will be in a mood to bestow the rod of equity and mercy on some more lucky boys and girls today. So that would be, I know, it's kind of exciting. The president announcing last night that he signed a full and unconditional pardon for his son, Hunter. It comes in the last weeks, of course, of his time in office, despite public assurances in the past that he would neither pardon nor commute his son's sentence. I mean, the timing of it is about what you'd expect, right? He wanted it after the election, and you don't want it too close to the inauguration.
Well, and he was due to be sentenced this month, Hunter was.
And you want it before the sentencing, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Less than 2 months before President-elect Donald Trump will return to the White House, in a Sunday night post on social, Trump called Biden's pardon such an abuse and miscarriage of justice. And Trump knows something about a miscarriage of justice, my friends. He also asked if Biden's pardon would apply to people convicted of attacking the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. Trump said during this year's presidential campaign that one of his first acts in his second term would be to free hundreds of those J6 rioters. Hunter Biden, you see him there with his dad, convicted in June of federal gun charges for lying about his addiction to crack cocaine when he purchased a gun. That was the thing. There's a little form that you have to fill out, and there's a box you have to check that you're not an addict when purchasing a gun. And he checked that box, but he was an addict, or at least using drugs at the time, supposedly. There's been some back and forth on that, but that was what essentially it was. 3 months later, he entered a guilty plea to tax offenses for failing to pay at least $1.4 million in federal taxes. Sentencing was expected later this month, as Kim was saying, in both these cases. And both these prosecutions were brought by the Justice Department. They had a special counsel, a guy, David Weiss. Now, he was appointed during the Trump administration. But Biden, this is how much of a choir boy Biden is. Biden actually let them add another prosecutor to that office to prosecute his son. So you talk about kind of a cognitive dissonance about it all. He was so worried about the appearance of any kind of politics involved in this that he let the Justice Department go on this jihad against his son. And now you end up with a guy who probably wouldn't get this kind of sentencing or be facing down any kind of sort of serious legal ramifications. This is according to David Katz, who, again, appeared here during this whole thing. I think, if you don't know David Katz, he's one of the great legal analysts in the English-speaking world who you'll see appear on podcasts and on various network newscasts. But anyway, to the point, he said two things. He said, first, this prosecution probably would not have reached this threshold had this been just a normal person without the last name Biden. And secondly, he said, 100% Joe Biden will pardon Hunter Biden. He was sure of it.
Yeah.
Again, he did his Katsadamas, which is his foretelling of the future, and on this he was 100% certain. And when he laid out the reasons why, it made total sense that Biden would pardon his son. He said, Biden did, "I believe in the justice system, but as I have wrestled with this, I also believe raw politics has infected this process, and it led to a miscarriage of justice. In trying to break Hunter, they've tried to break me. And there's no reason to believe it will stop here. Enough is enough," he said. And honestly, Hunter Biden's issues have been a political liability for Joe Biden for a long time. And in a sense, this is a predictable finish. Now, as you might imagine, there is a chapter and verse coming from the GOP mediaverse, and they are angry about this. They are, but again, their anger is, I'd suggest, packaged in different ways with legal analyses and such.
Jill Biden did have a response to this as well. She was giving these remarks last night on at the National Guard family she was speaking to, and reporters were screaming at her. Oh, there she is. Yeah.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Dr. Biden, do you support the pardon of Hunter?
Pardon of Hunter, Dr. Biden. Dr. Biden, what changed on the pardon of Hunter?
Yeah. She says, she yells, "Of course I." She says, "Of course I support the pardon." She said, "People are almost never brought to trial on felony charges solely for how they filled out a gun form." This is President Biden who said this. "Those who were late paying their taxes because of serious addictions, but paid them back subsequently with interest and penalties, are typically given non-criminal resolutions." So
yeah, I mean, she's
Jill
not
Biden
wrong about that.
I support the pardon of my son. Yes. Yeah.
By the way, is there any time that you're more gleeful about hearing those violins playing over whatever you have to say? It is, yeah, where were you guys 10 seconds ago when they were yelling questions at me? You guys are a little, Tony, play that again for me. So she's, yeah. Bum, 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 ba-da-dum. It's a Christmas party with all these little kids, okay, for those who are listening. There's nothing but little kids there.
Support the pardon of Hunter?
That's when she needs the violins to come in.
Yeah, pick it up now.
Yeah. She's hugging all these little kids. All right. This is a big Christmas party at the White House. Yeah, now she leans in to make a remark, and they start with the violins. I love it. That was great. All right. Oh, that's the White House. Now,
The Mark Thompson Show.
from the White House to the outhouse, here's what's going on Fox News Channel and how they react to it. If Tony can rally this, you'll give it a listen.
For one, I guess because I'm so cynical, I never believed President Biden when he said he wasn't going to pardon his child. Are you surprised at the pardon?
Absolutely not surprised at all. The only question is why he carried this on for so long at the great expense of American taxpayers. There has been so much weaponization of the Justice Department, and this is yet another example. He was asked time and again whether he would pardon him, whether he would commute his sentence, and he vehemently denied that. There's no two ways about it. So certainly it's just a brazen lie. It's very shameless.
All right, Tom, you're a smart lawyer. Why now and why so expansive? I mean, I would love to have a pardon that went all the way back to college. His pretty much does. And it is after the conviction, but before the sentencing. Is that to avoid a pre-sentence investigation? Is that to avoid the temptation to cooperate against others? Why now?
Well, I think the timing, Trey, is simple. It was after the election. And the reason why Biden was continually, as we now see, lying was because it was at a time when he was a candidate, or at least Kamala Harris was a candidate, and he didn't want to come out and say what he presumably planned to do all along. I think he wanted to issue it now so that it would come before sentencing. I think that the political hit would have been even more severe if the judges, as everyone expected, sentenced Hunter Biden to serve hard time, and then the president comes in and issues the pardon. The political hit would have been even more significant. So I think that explains the timing. But look, there's no way of getting around this, no way to put this more gently than this is just total disrespect for the rule of law.
Okay, so let me just say that guy actually makes sense. Minus the last part. I mean, the whole pardon thing is rife with, and I'll ask Gary Dietrich about this in a minute. But there's so many examples of this being, if you will, informed by no respect for the rule of law. I mean, he stuck the landing for Fox by saying this reeks of no respect for the rule of law. But the pardon process, almost by definition, with every president has something that stinks. With the Clintons, it was this Mark Rich. Mark Rich was a big donor to the Clintons, big supporter of the Clintons, and he needed a pardon. He was in prison at the time, as I recall, and he was petitioned by Mark Rich's wife, and he ended up getting this very controversial pardon. And that might have just been one of the controversial pardons in Clinton's time, but that one got a lot of attention. But I'll give you another one with Trump. And I know you know about Steve Bannon, who defrauded the Trump followers for all that money for the Build a Wall, but I'm not even talking about that. Trump pardoned Jared Kushner's father, who was serving time. I think he'd served 18 months already
because
for
he was a total crook.
Listen, he was so Kim's right. He's a total crook, and one of the witnesses that was to have been used by the prosecution, he set up her husband in a hotel room with a prostitute and a video camera so as to compromise. I mean, the whole thing is so unseemly and gross, right? So he wanted to essentially just destroy this witness, so by doing this to her father. So Trump, to get back to the pardon part, ended up pardoning him. All right, so he's in the Kushner family, and you can see pardoning family is not exactly, invented over the weekend by Joe Biden. All I'm trying to say is that those Fox News Channel people are not completely wrong. Biden said he wasn't going to pardon his son, and they're not wrong about saying it was always the case that he probably would pardon his son. I think that is also true, just to speak about it objectively. We told you the reasons. We had David Katz in, and he explained them. But the last thing I would say is that they're also probably not wrong about the reason why. That is to say, why he said it during his term. He was trying to saying that he wasn't going to pardon his son was associated with trying to establish norms that he respects, the institution of the Justice Department, the institution of American justice. He was trying during his term to send the message that we're not like they are. They run afoul of the law. They don't care about the law. They don't care about American institutions. And so they'll take a wrecking ball to all of that, but we won't. Even in the case of my own son, I will let this prosecution continue. So again, they're not wrong. I would say, though, the last thing that former prosecutor said, which is, this shows a reckless disregard for the American justice. All right, but that's just political rhetoric. But I take the point that the 3D chess of this you could see all the way. Biden is as bad as Trump. Who said that? Lori. Wow.
Oh, wow.
That's quite a position, Lori. I've got to say, first of all, that I really groove on your avatar, which is a picture of you and wild hair. But I don't groove on Biden is as bad as Trump. The problem with Donald Trump, one of them, at least as it pertains to, is as bad as, I mean, look at who he's populating his administration with. I mean, that's all you need to really pay attention to when you want to do the comparison. I just don't think expertise is valued in any way in a Trump administration.
We just
only loyalty is valued, not expertise.
We hold ourselves to a higher standard. If you say you're going to do something, you do it, right? If President Biden says one thing, we expect him to hold true to that. Whereas with Trump, we expect him to lie. We know that whatever he says is not the truth, and we don't expect much from him.
Yeah, but I will say this, Kim, to be fair. I mean, this is an odd day to make that statement because he told us that he wasn't going to pardon his son, and then he did.
No, that's my whole point. That's why I think Lori is upset about it.
I see. That's what you're saying. Okay, I'm
Right,
sorry, I
because
misunderstood.
we have a certain expectation for President Biden that he's
Right.
not going to sink down to that level, and here he is doing it.
Right, I see. Yeah.
And as a mom, I get it, because if I had the power to keep my child out of jail, I certainly would use it. But as a president, as someone with integrity, as someone we looked up to do the right thing, if you come out and you say you're going to do something, you make a promise, then you follow through, and he didn't do it.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I get on this one thing that you can draw this parallel, but the reality is, for me, and I could go on, and we have gone on and on. In fact, the show sort of has been a couple of years of going on and on about Trump misdeeds, illegalities, immoralities, etc. But give me a president who tries to overturn an election and engineer a coup, and I will show you a guy who is in no way comparable to Joe Biden. I mean, it's not even in the same universe. Right. This guy concocted a scheme with fake electors to then go to Washington and try to overturn the election that way. This is after he replaced the attorney general with some toady who was going to speak openly and in a press conference situation about the fact that there were irregularities and problems with the election when there weren't any irregularities or problems with the election. These are the legal things. And then ultimately, he turned that mob loose on the Capitol. Don't tell me that in any way that guy is comparable to Joe Biden. It just doesn't a whole lot. And again, that's just that one thing. I don't think you need to go past that one thing. Now to some of the other comments. Vilma, who was one of the OGs of this show, pocket pardon the January 6th committee and witnesses, etc., she says. That's what her advice would be to Joe Biden. That's very interesting because there is a sense, and it's really borne out by a lot of what we're hearing, certainly in the rhetoric around Trump, Steve Bannon, and those who are involved in what I'd suggest is sort of a political jihad. They want to go after everybody who they perceive as their enemies. So to Vilma's point, the J6 committee, witnesses, we'll see. It would be an interesting notion, frankly, off brand for Joe Biden to do it. But if he were to in any way pardon the January 6th committee and witnesses, etc., pocket pardon, and somehow keep the cloak of pardon over them in some kind of ongoing fashion, that would be fascinating. I don't see it happening, but perhaps. Donald Trump pardoned Lil Wayne, Roger Stone, and Steve Bannon, says Emmanuel. Why does Hunter Biden not deserve a pardon from his father? Yeah. I forget. It's funny what you forget. I didn't forget about Roger Stone and Steve Bannon, but I forgot about Lil Wayne. What was Lil Wayne pardoned for? Do you, anybody?
Google it.
All right, well, we should check it. But yeah, of course, you're right. Not to. Lonnie Starr says, please stop it. We should not be discussing Biden's inconsequential pardon of his son. Is a distraction from the consequential, potentially apocalyptic Trump era. Look, I agree with you, which is sort of why I was saying what I said at the beginning of this show. I feel in the news of the week, oddly, the pardoning of Hunter Biden from a substantive going forward standpoint isn't particularly significant. On the scale of things that are going to affect us, I would agree with you that, for example, I talked to Gary Dietrich about the FBI situation, the Pete Hegseth thing. As I was suggesting to you in my last remarks, Steve Bannon and those who are, J.D. Vance I would include in this category, they are part of the jihad that is associated with getting back at their political enemies. And I think you could see any number of ways in which you'll really see a return to the weaponization of the FBI, like a J. Edgar Hoover FBI. And some of you feel as though it's already there. It's not. there. It's not quite so bad. But so I agree with that point. But still, it is the news of the day. So on some level, I think it does have to be addressed. Lil Wayne, his real name, you had it.
Dwayne Michael Carter Jr.
Mm-hmm.
He
Pleaded
had pleaded
Go
guilty
ahead.
to federal weapons charges not last year, but
Right.
that's what he was charged for.
Right. And
Yeah.
so he was found to be carrying a gun and bullets when cops searched a private plane that he was in Miami in 2019. He faced up to 10 years in prison, and Trump pardoned him. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's also one of the biggest stars in rap, and he did support Donald Trump. He met and appeared to endorse President Trump during the election campaign, praising his work on criminal reform. And 5 U.S. #1 rap singles is what they were saying. And that is the number. When you hit 5 #1 rap singles, you are likely to get that pardon. So
They said that he gave a lot of money to research hospitals and food banks and charities, so they thought he was a good candidate for pardon.
I mean, he might be. I mean, I'm not here to say he's not. I mean, every president has these things where they evaluate. It's not always the wrongly accused death row inmate. It's oftentimes the moneyed, connected luminary who gets the pardon. Brian Jennings says on the pardon thing, remember when Trump pardoned a convicted war criminal? That was okay? Yeah, that is brutal. You should go back and look at the Trump pardons, and maybe I will get into this a little bit more tomorrow. But when you want to get into, and again, as I mentioned, the pardon thing is always a bit shady because the people who end up with pardons can oftentimes be the moneyed political supporters who need a favor. But honest to God, convicted war criminals, that is absolutely right. And I'll follow up on that tomorrow. They were pardoned under the Trump administration. Biden was urged to pardon his son, says Tammy, because of Trump's promise to pardon the J6 criminals and Cash's appointment and Bondi appointment, etc. The fact that Hunter's crime, in quotes, was filling out paperwork while stoned, may justify the fact that Hunter is now the beneficiary of a pardon. Yeah, could be. I mean, there's no question that the J6, anything associated with J6, the J6 coup, the violent overthrow of the Capitol, et cetera, that should all be treated with the kind of intense scrutiny that would, I'd suggest, absolutely dictate hands off. Not going to pardon anybody associated with that. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.